My name is Kelly Reardon Slater, and I work in the Entrepreneurship Center here on campus. Sometimes when I come into classrooms and do exercises, students ask, well, why is the Entrepreneurship Center doing these types of things? So I'll get that question out of the way in case you might have had it. When you think about name, image, likeness, and capitalizing on it, it being the newest way for college athletes to be able to earn some money, side hustle, or bigger. I thought I should look into it since we have so many athletes on campus, and I'm based in the Lally School, but I work with all students on campus. A lot of the Lally students are athletes. I said maybe I should look into this and see if there's something I can do to assist college athletes with this. So I'll tell you who I am and who I'm not. I'll be upfront and honest with who I'm not. I was not a college athlete in my day. I'm not a name, image, likeness expert, and I'm not a name, image, likeness compliance personnel here at RPI. I am strictly on the entrepreneurship side here at Rensselaer. I run the Entrepreneurship Center. I help students explore entrepreneurship and coach them understand if maybe a business opportunity that they have an idea for is feasible, sustainable. Can they do it while they're a student? I enjoy coaching students, helping them make connections with local business community here in the Capital Region and the alumni community as well. I am a creative entrepreneur myself. I love to be able to connect students to resources. You might also be wondering, is capitalizing on your name, image, likeness really a business? If you ask yourself that, if you're receiving revenue, you're earning income, making sales, having sponsorship opportunities that are monetary, then you are a business. You're a non-traditional business. This is a new wave of business that is happening now as we speak, being that this is such a new category of business. But you are still a business and you need to prepare for that. So that's where I thought I could add some help, some knowledge, maybe just a few pointers. If you're really brand focused, that's great. If you're not interested in creating a product or creating a service or a sports camp or anything, that's okay. But you still need to have a really clear value proposition, understand your audience and who you're branding to, and understand how you're different and how you're going to handle situations that you may be put in, social media, snafus that happen, how you'll position yourself and manage those inquiries and unsatisfied supporters. Those are all business related questions and scenarios that you can plan for, but you do have to plan for them. So that's what I hope to be able to offer you. So what is a brand? And here I'm going to ask you to kind of jump in, unmute. When you think about a brand, what do you think of?
I guess it's kind of like an individual concept or an individual's concept or a group's concept that they market to the masses.
Anybody else? What does brand mean to you?
I think of something like Chevy or Pepsi or GM, GE, more so than the individual, as Amechi mentioned, the niche brand.
Yeah, when we do think of brands, we think of those that are forefront in our mind because they've been repeatedly put in front of us in the media. Even just on our daily drive to work or into school, you're seeing brands routinely. And that's the key. You want to see things multiple times, dozens of times, to be embedded and really be at the forefront of the brand of the category that you're in. So when I think of brands, these are some of the things I think of: name, logo, color scheme, tone of the content you're reading, the category of the brand that you're looking at, personality that might be behind a brand, identity, image, the culture of a brand, style. How about a slogan? The feel of a brand. It's what a company creates to portray an image to its consumer or to its following. It's a perception, really, is what a brand is. It's intangible, but it's so extremely valuable. So today what I want to provide is a little value, but I want to provide value based on who you are. So I kind of need to understand your goals and what motivates you. So in entrepreneurship, we hypothesize a lot. We make assumptions about our customer base, and then we go and test those assumptions. One of the new terms that I'll introduce you to today will be archetype. So I'm going to hypothesize about the archetype that I'm speaking to today, you, and what archetype you might fall in within the student category that is interested in capitalizing on your name, image, and likeness. And I'll describe these 3 different ones that I came up with, and you might relate to 1 or 2, or you might relate to none of them, and you're a completely different archetype that I didn't hypothesize at all. So I'll throw a little business at you here with my archetypes, and here's one. So I thought maybe some of you might be what I'm typing as the pro athlete. You dream to play at the professional level. You're not really into business, but you really do covet that sponsorship of a brand that maybe Kevin just mentioned, one of those big brands. And you have thought about making social media more purposeful. You may have a following started already, maybe not, but that's where you're headed towards. So that's one of the archetypes I thought I'd be speaking to today. Another one is what I'll call the athlepreneur, athlete entrepreneur. So you realize that there's pros is maybe not really in your future. You value being an athlete and the abilities and skills that you learned. And you want to take some of those and use them to form a business, a product or a service, whatever that business may be. And you might have even thought within that business concept who your customers might be, but you haven't really taken the plunge to dive in any deeper than that. So that's the second archetype I thought I might be joined by this morning. And the third was really the career-minded athlete who I might be speaking to. You enjoyed your athletics, you grew being an athlete, you're prepared to go into corporate America, and you want to use some of the skills that you learned as an athlete to build a brand around yourself and be recognized for the person that you are moving into that corporate position. So I went out on a limb, made these 3 archetypes here, but ultimately you may or may not assimilate with one of these. So what I want to know is who you are and why you're here. Anybody want to unmute and introduce yourself?
My name is Mechi Conkle. I am a 5th-year senior, thinking about coming back for a 6th year after using an extra year. I'm here because I'm trying to find out more about NIL, obviously, and how I can market myself to others. Still learning, obviously, so I'm kind of still I don't really know about the archetypes and don't really know about like how I can market myself, but that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Great. Cool. So you have an idea, maybe you're ready to launch a product or have a service in mind. Cool.
I guess I can go next. I'm John, and I'm also a 5th-year senior. I'm planning to graduate this semester though, and I'm hoping, I guess, to get like an NIL sponsorship from like a local business around me. And I'd say that I probably trying to fall under the pro athlete archetype. So I just got my pro license in triathlon last summer. I'm trying to take advantage of that.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
All right, so my name's Jonathan. I don't really know where I'm going to end up. I just want to get more information about NIL and what I can do with it, take advantage of the reputability that I have as an athlete, and try to make some money along the way.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for doing the shout outs and letting us know who you are. That helps me understand how, which direction I can take this in and what resources will be great for you. So since we're talking a little bit about business and archetypes, why do entrepreneurs care about archetypes? So I kind of just archetyped you, right? The student athlete, and put 3 different kind of categories of student athletes I thought might be out there this morning. But little business quiz here. Why do entrepreneurs care to even categorize that group that we're talking about? And why should you? So when it comes to being an entrepreneur and finding that customer, that market that you're going to reach into and affect, maybe sell to, service, you need to know what drives the customer. And the more you know about the specific archetype of your customer base, the better you're going to be able to be at reaching them, at speaking to their motivation to make a purchase, to follow you. It's really about the emotion behind those decisions that they're making. So there are many different types of motivations and emotions, just like we just heard from you. Understanding the archetype down to the nitty-gritty of your customer base is very, very useful. The more you know, the better. So when I started looking at NIL, I said, okay, well, what are students doing? I wasn't very aware. So I looked up and saw, okay, yeah, there's some that are doing the endorsement deals and making some good money. And then there's some that are doing endorsements and sponsors with the local businesses and smaller businesses. And there's some that are launching products. Let me just share a few that I found. So here's an example of, I think, a pretty popular athlete in college, where this is right when the NIL became approved. This was July 1st. They posted this. They are being sponsored by this nutrition company. So they're showing the money and they're showing the product. And that was their first Instagram post. But then there's students like this. This is an athlete who decided, hey, I can finally make some money, use my athletic following to be able to marry them together and make some money off of it. So he's using his talents to do so. Here's another one who's using her talents. I really like this one, being a creative entrepreneur myself. And she's making product, really creative product, boxy product. And she's an athlete. So she's using, the athlete and the creative in her to be able to capitalize. Here's another one that I thought was cool. This student or group of students is creating a fundraising effort. And so they're branding a product or products, clothing line to sell, but they're doing it for fundraising purposes. And if you read onto this particular one, the walk-on mentality, those students that are not getting scholarships to play in college, they want to be able to help fund those students, bring them up to the same level of comfort when it comes to finances while in college. Here's another one who's creating books based on his religious beliefs and selling those. So there is a ton of different opportunities that students are really jumping onto. And then there's partnerships. There's using companies out there like Cameo and Dreamfield, where they're going to do a service for you to help you move your brand along. But there's more than that. When I did some analyzing of some athletes, I said, how did they go from being a regular student athlete with some, hometown followers, some friends and family followers, to getting these 200,000 in post engagements? So I grabbed one athlete and followed his, and just from last July moving forward to see how he did it. And he started out with, just a couple hundred engagements with his social media posts. And then he grew to a couple thousand, maybe 2,000, 2,500. And then he grew to about 6,000. And then he grew to about 20,000 as he was starting to get those small sponsorships. He was getting about 20,000 follower engagements. And then he all of a sudden got a Subway sponsorship and grew to like 200,000 engagements on one social media post. So it's really interesting for me to go back and kind of analyze, how did they do that? Try to understand, and knowing very little behind the scenes, only going from what they're showing me on social media, but do a little sleuthing yourself. Who do you follow? Who's really inspirational to you? Can you go back and see the growth of that particular athlete and their following growth? Maybe kind of pinpoint some of the brand that they're trying to portray themselves with, and look at their stats over time and how that has grown. I find that really interesting, and maybe after today you'll go back and look at one of those who you are following and see if you can identify that yourselves. But not everybody goes that route with the capitalizing on their NIL. They're doing other things like live appearance gigs, speaking engagements, photo sessions, signings, and this is a different path you can take. You can start small, but small still takes a lot of effort and planning to get the level of interest to follow you so that you can lead to one of these efforts. You can't just book a photo shoot for yourself and expect people to be interested and come and look for, you to sign those photos for them. You have to have a following, right? So that's what I think we should be talking about. What I wanted to do today is put together something that was going to help you build up that brand of yours so that you can take it down whichever pathway you choose to, any of the examples or anything that you have in mind to capitalize on your NIL. The first step being building that brand. So with nearly 500,000 NCAA students out there, student athletes in 24 different sports, those opportunities are not just going to come knocking on your door. And I can guarantee you they didn't necessarily come knocking on the doors of those who you might be following and being inspired by. You have to work towards them. You have to research, you have to network, you have to get out there and really make inquiries into the brands that you're looking to get sponsorships from, align yourself, your values, seek those mutual interests and partnerships. And that if you build it, they will come. They may come, but who has time to wait for that, right? So get started building your brand now. That's the first step. And then see if you can make an influence on finding that opportunity for yourself faster. So hopefully you all received, those who registered in advance for today, received the workbook that I sent out. I want to let you know this workbook is yours to keep. Write in it, dog-ear it, do whatever you want. This tool is something that I wanted to offer you because I found it pretty useful. It's a workbook that can guide you towards recognizing what you need to look at and focus on as you move forward on building your brand. So this individual, Jeremy Darlow, is a brand consultant for athletes, coaches, and teams now. He's a former director of marketing for Adidas, football, baseball, hockey, volleyball, and lacrosse. So he has about 15 years of experience behind him, and he's a pretty interesting personality. If you crack the book open and saw there's 75 different, what he calls rules, to look at when you're building your brand. And it's very much an interactive workbook to use. So like I said, go through, there's exercises in it, and there's also a whole series of videos that he puts along with this. So I went through this. If you go to his website, choose that free option on the right there, 100% free, and it lists a ton of small clip videos, which are great. You can binge them, and you can literally go through what he offers, these 75 different, he doesn't touch on every one, but rules in maybe half a day if you binge these and went through them all. But do it at your own pace. What's cool is that it's little snippets, and then he references, hey, do this little activity yourself. Open up your workbook and do this, and then fill this in, and then do this for homework, and then come back. There's other tools that I wanted to introduce you to, and that's really what I do with entrepreneurship, is offer tools that you can learn about today as a student, either utilize right away or put in your back pocket for later. So this one being, the first tool that I wanted to offer you today. This is a tool that is traditionally used for students who come to me with an entrepreneurial idea. It's called the Business Model Canvas. If you're a management student, you might have seen it in some of your classes. It basically takes a business concept and breaks it down into 9 different categories, important sections of a business that you really want to focus on early on in that venture. And the goal of using this tool is to de-risk your business, to de-risk it in the eyes of a potential investor, to de-risk it in the eyes of a potential partner that you want to come on board with you. It's a way to look at your early stage business at a glance. This is a living document. So if you were to think of using this tool for, say, Airbnb, I wanted to give you an example. So if Airbnb were to use this tool and fill it in, they're in their early stages. When they thought of their customers, I want you to focus on these 2 categories here, these value proposition and the customer segments. That's where you normally start with on this tool. So if they were looking at those 2 boxes, the value proposition is, what value are you bringing to your customer base? What need are you fulfilling for them? How are you making things better for them? And what makes you different from the competition out there? So when Airbnb filled this in, they said, okay, we're offering cheaper options for overnight stays. We're being able to offer different options, private residences as opposed to hotels. And then, oh yeah, we have what's called a double-sided marketplace or a dual marketplace. And we're serving 2 populations, really. We're serving the traveler who has the need for rooms. And then we're serving the other population of people who have the room and are renting it out. So when you look over at their customer segments, and I won't get too businessy on you here, but there's that dual side. There's the guests that they're working with, those travelers. These are some archetypes that they broke down among their guest category. We have budget travelers, business travelers, maybe there's some globetrotters out there that they would be focusing on in their customers, but then they also have the hosts. And so the host who wants to rent out their space makes some extra money on the side. So this is just gives you a glance at if we're a small business, early stage, were to fill this out. And these are all guesses in the early stage. I want to make note of. You don't know all these answers. So don't worry if you think I can't fill out all those boxes. I really have no clue yet. That's all right. These are absolutely 100% guesses in the early stage. What you do as an entrepreneur is you go out, make those guesses, experiment on them, come back, analyze on what you've found, and then do more experiments until you can validate these hypotheses or invalidate them and go in a different direction. That's kind of entrepreneurship in a nutshell with the way that we teach it here at RPI. Another tool using the same concept as the business model canvas that might be more relevant to what you're doing is called the brand model canvas. So this is a tool that I came across while doing some research for this. And again, it's a way to show your plan in one overview. It's a snapshot of what you're attempting to do with your brand. It helps not only others who might be helping you understand your motivations and your direction, but hopefully it's going to help you know who you are and keep you honest and true to what you plan your brand to be from the beginning. Sometimes there's a lot of external influences on us as we move towards building something, a business, a brand, and it's nice to go back to what you originally thought, those true, honest, raw emotions and hypotheses that you had to begin with. So this is what you would do on this canvas. You put down your guesses. These canvases change all the time. You'll have iterations. Draft it out for yourself. Figure out what your core brand message is. Who do you think your customer segments or your followers are going to be? Or maybe they're sponsors. Who is it that you're looking to make those connections with and or sell to? These are all things that you want to consider. And these are things that in Darlow's book, he'll touch on all of these areas, but in his own way. He doesn't use the canvas. He uses worksheet activities to help you generate these answers. So you might go from the Darlow book, generate those answers, and then put them in here on your canvas if you choose to use both of these tools. Entrepreneurship, again, is about experimenting, analyzing, adjusting. You don't know all the answers up front. And so just with, learning a new thing, learning how to brand yourself, you don't know all the answers up front. You can't be taught everything. You have to experience it yourself. Very similar to athletics, right? You can't know everything on day one. You have to learn from those around you. You have to do things yourself. You have to trip up, fail, and then start again. I wanted to get into, just in case you're looking at the customer segments box, core audience that you're reaching. In this tool, they want you to break down your customer segments, not only in archetypes like I talked about, but when you're building those archetypes, use demographics and psychographics to be able to identify who those audience or customer segments are. And so, in case you weren't familiar with psychographics, we all pretty much know what demographics are, but psychographics are those softer things that people covet. You wouldn't necessarily know about them right away by introducing yourself at a networking meeting. These are things kind of on the backside. So this is a really cool graphic that just explains psychographics, gives you a reminder of what those are. So that then you can go back to your canvas and fill in with as much detail as you can who you think you're actually going to meet. And these things matter because when you go into the Darlow book or start looking at your brand and understanding your customer, you want to understand not only the left side, but the right side as well, because that's how you're going to be able to relate and make your followers or your customers be motivated to do what it is you're hoping they're going to do. Make that purchase from you, follow you, be engaged with you, whatever that may be. So some more tools I wanted to introduce to you are put out by Techstars. If you're not familiar with Techstars, Techstars is an accelerator program for young companies, and they offer in-person and virtual cohorts of teams that are building up their businesses, but they also offer some really great online tools. Okay, so this is Techstars. This helps you fill out those answers as well. So Techstars has kind of made it really easy. They just keep asking you questions. And as you're answering these questions, you're starting to understand more about your brand and who you are and what you want to put out there. How do you want your followers to feel? What is it, the emotions you're trying to trigger? But Techstars also offers this great thing, which is videos as well. And this guy is really great. I watched what he offers, and he's really easy to understand. So he's going to help you, again, in small snippets, 3-4 minute videos, where you can figure out your position, your motivation, your mission in building your own brand. Okay, so the brand identity map was another tool that I found while doing some of this. And the purpose of the brand identity map is to develop a consistent and repeated message. As you'll start to develop your brand, your business, your offering, you're going to need to have that 30-second sell is what we prepare our student entrepreneurs for. How do you explain what you're doing or who you are as a brand in a very short snippet of time? And using these tools, and the brand identity map in particular, will help you develop that one-liner, two-liner to help people understand where you're coming from, who you are, what your business product service offering is in a real short phrase. You're going to use it throughout all of your communications. It's something that you're going to fall back on repeatedly. Again, getting that message out multiple times so that your brand and your mission are paired together in your followers or your consumers' minds, and they're going to think of you and think of this together. Here's one example of how that brand identity map could be filled out. This is a company that was creating luggage. They felt like they were reaching out to a particular category of people, and it was the jet setter, the business traveler. But they figured out their audience is female, and they are status conscious, and they're looking for fashion when they travel. So that's who they are honing into when they are making their social media posts, when they are developing their graphics. They're having this consumer in mind. Now, an interesting part of this tool is, if you see on the bottom right, is those reptilian hot buttons or the limbic hot buttons. Those are really interesting. What are some of the words that you can use in your messaging, your branding, or just your everyday content that is going to be able to grab the attention of that particular market that you're looking for? And this business thought these words were going to actually attract that female audience in that age range. Fashionable, smart. Those are things they want to include in their messaging so that they're going to grab the attention of the right segment. So as I was doing some more research on NIL, I found more resources out there that were actually for the college and the universities than there were for the athletes. And so then I also found there was resources out there for the small businesses, so SMBs, small businesses out there who you might be looking at for a sponsorship. So I thought it might be interesting to know how small businesses are being told to approach NIL. Again, this is like the Wild West right now. No one has a set process or procedure to make these connections, these sponsorships. So these are all tips that they're receiving. They want to make sure that the messaging is vetted in advance that you're going to be doing with them. They want to make sure that it's a repeatable, relatable message. When they vet you, they want to look into what kind of engagement you have, what geographic area you are pulling followers from. So I think knowing who your customer and how they're being advised is just as important as knowing their demographic and their psychographic. Those partners, those sponsorships that you are potentially going to be working with, they're going to be testing, tracking, and experimenting too. Like I said, this is a very early market of experimenting and advertising for them as well. So they're going to be looking at tracking links that you're using in your social media posts. They're going to be following swipes and promo codes that they may provide for you, and unique landing page visits. Those are some of the measurables that they're going to be looking for from interactions with you. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of the resources that were available at RPI for you. So if you haven't already worked with them, a list of individuals that are here to help you with your NIL. Katie Paradise being the primary person who is working with NIL and compliance. She's out on maternity leave right now, so Erin Kemp is filling in for her. But so is Kevin and Karen. So please tap into them. They are your NIL experts here at RPI and will be able to answer those questions that you have. If you have questions about branding, marketing, business creation, I hope you would come to me for those as well. We are such a small school. You know your athletes by name. You're working on a case-by-case basis when these opportunities arise for these athletes, and I think that's awesome. At larger schools, you're just not known by name. You're going to be that, number athlete that's coming in with that sponsorship opportunity, and your athletic advisor might not really understand what your motivations are. So I love that Rensselaer is small and can understand exactly who their athletes are, and again, take those opportunities on a case-by-case basis. So that's great. Another resource I wanted to share with you that I only found just this morning is this NIL Network. You might be aware of it already, and it's really an online marketplace of resources that offers athletes a listing of service providers that can help them. And it's service providers that they have mostly vetted. This company has vetted for you, and the service providers they have found, they're focused on athletes first, have the athlete's interest in mind. So if you jump on here and you look at service providers, you can see all these different categories of service providers that a student athlete trying to capitalize on their NIL might be interested in. So let's say, content production and contact vetting is something I'm looking for. They're going to tell me, okay, there's 47 potential providers out there that you could work with. And so you can vet them from here. The other database they have is athlete businesses that they want to be able to support. So if you are creating a business, you can apply to have your business featured here. Go into football, there's 14. Come and look at this website and see what some other students are doing. I mentioned just a few at the top of the hour, but there's lots of things that students are doing here.
Kelly, would you please click on the men's cross country, track and field? We have a couple of those student athletes, and I'm curious myself.
Yeah. The Vintage Hawks from Kansas. Let's see what they do. They're doing clothing line.
One thing that's interesting, that they must have permission from the institution, or at least the athletic department, to use their marks and logos. At this point, we don't have that option at RPI.
Right. Good point. At this point, you have to ask permission and license those opportunities from the Institute if you wanted to be able to use those in your branding and marketing efforts. So students are finding other ways to kind of assimilate themselves with their college without having to license. So you might be wearing your red, but you're not wearing your uniform in your branding and marketing efforts. So I just want to stress that this is your journey, whichever path you choose to take. There's really no wrong answers. You have to learn to fail, and how you react to failure is really what's going to set you apart. Resilience is going to make winners here in this category. So failing often, failing early, learning from those failures and getting back out there and trying again is how you're going to win. So where do we go from here? There's lots of ways that I could continue offering knowledge to you with categories like financial literacy or negotiations or more branding resources. I can bring speakers in. It's really up to you. You have no commitment to me. You came here today, and I'm grateful for that. You're just committed to yourself and your vision, and when it comes to creating your NIL and branding efforts. So I want to be a resource for you and hear from you what it is you'd like to do moving forward.
What would you say is kind of like the best first step after this? Like, is it to go through, the Darlow rules? Is it to kind of go through the slides and see what fits for us, or like what's the best plan of action, do you think?
Well, since you have the book already in hand, Definitely, I would flip through the Darlow book and log on and look at some of his first videos. That I found really interesting. He is a brand himself. So you're learning not only by what he's saying, it's not, do as I say, not as I do, because he's doing it too. So as you just listen and watch what he's doing and hear what he's saying, I think that's a great start. Start jotting things down. Nothing's better than actually putting pen to paper, or start typing things out so that you can see things. They're more solidified when you actually put them down, get them out of your head. And again, don't be afraid to make guesses, because at this point you're just not sure. So put those guesses down and then experiment on them until you can get them validated.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about those websites like Open Doors, Open Sponsorship. Are those also just tools, or are those actual websites where you like find a sponsorship through them?
Kevin, are you familiar with those two?
I've heard more about Open Doors than the other. It would be, I say partnership, but they're looking for you to pay them to provide you a service, generally
Okay.
speaking. And it's typically with an organization such as an athletic department versus an individual.
Okay.
John and you and everybody else, you could take a look through there to learn more. But that's my initial thought off of the things I've read.
Okay.
What's
Thank you.
interesting is some of the matchmaking companies that are popping up now that are matching the student to an opportunity or a sponsorship, or matching the school and their entire team to a sponsorship. Some of them are actually being created by athletes themselves. They, have the perspective of being the athlete. So I find those ones pretty interesting. So look at the story behind the company you might be looking, a service provider you might be looking to work with, and see where their experience comes from.
What I would suggest for you guys individually is give thought to what makes you unique. Look, you're all at RPI and you're all competing at high level of athletics. As Kelly said, there are hundreds of thousands of student athletes, and not all of them are at such high academic schools as RPI, but a lot of them are. So what separates you from the person next to you? John, I know a little bit about your story being a triathlete. Now, being a pro triathlete from a school like RPI is, in my opinion, unique. Amechi, I know a little bit about your story and what you're overcoming to try to continue to be an athlete. To me, that's unique. Those are the things that people are going to want to know. You can't just knock on the door and say, hey, I play football or I run at RPI. Well, they're going to say big deal. A lot of students do that. What is it that makes you unique versus the person next to you on your team or in your league or even at your division to a certain degree?
Great point. That value proposition in business terms. And if you're not sure about yourself in answering those questions that Kevin just posed, look at some of the individuals that you're following, the brands that you are attuned to, and you find yourself following and liking. And what is it about them? Is there something unique that you're seeing within them? Because if you're seeing it in them, you might have some of it yourself. So look outwards if you are having trouble looking inwards.
And put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Again, Kelly mentioned you're going to fail. That's okay. It shouldn't be a detriment. It should be a building block.
Absolutely. I'll do a shameless plug for the competition that I run through entrepreneurship, and that's a way that you can also, if you're looking at building a business yourself, whether it be a product or a service, you can come into our competitions through the Entrepreneurship Center and win some money along the way. So we start each semester with a problem competition. So it's literally just a 2-minute pitch about a problem in the world as yet to be solved. So tell us about it. Why hasn't it been solved? How big is that problem? You could win $500. And we start with a problem in entrepreneurship because we find that the best businesses are built by those who are solving problems for people. From there, we go to a competition that's about ideas. So if you have an idea for a business, it might have been rooted in that problem that you pitched, it might be something completely different. you could win $1,000 by going through the Change the World Challenge, which is the second competition each semester. That's where you do a little bit of discovery about your customer segments, learning who they are and what need it is they have that you could solve. What problem is it? What hair on fire issue is it that you might be able to solve for them? So that competition takes you a little bit out of your comfort zone as well. You can work in a team or as an individual and kind of test the market and see what is out there and if you're headed down the right road with the idea you have. But those are two that you can start with, even if you don't consider yourself an entrepreneur. But I'll post leading up to these competitions. I'll let you know deadlines, send reminders out, and have examples of companies and students that have done it in the past. Well, I look forward to seeing what you produce. I look forward to continuing communicating with you, helping answer some questions if you have them, or coming into my competitions. And I hope you have a great semester.